Good evening. I was asked to remind everybody that this Wednesday night, all adults will be in the classroom, or is it adults or everybody? Everybody will be meeting in here Wednesday night. We will not have Wednesday night classes. Also, if you were unable to partake of the Lord's Supper this morning, it has been left prepared in the parlor, just down the hall and to your left. And you can go while we sing this first song, and you'll be served. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Lord, I give my life to Thee, Thine forevermore to be. Lord, I give my life to Thee, Thine forevermore to be. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. Lord, I give my life to Thee, Thine forevermore to be. Lord, I give my life to Thee, Thine forevermore to be. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at Thy feet its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. Lord, I give my life to Thee, Thine forevermore to be. Lord, I give my life to Thee, Thine forevermore to be. And if you will, join me in standing for this, our second and last song before we are dismissed to go to our classes in prayer. Teach me, Lord, to wait down on my knees till in your own good time you answer my needs. Teach me not to rely on what others do, but to wait in prayer for an answer from you. Teach me, Lord, to wait while hearts are aflame. Let me humble my and call on your name. Keep my faith renewed, my eyes on Thee. Let me be on this earth what you want me to be. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles.
Father in heaven, thank you for this opportunity to gather together as your family, Father, and strengthen and encourage one another in song and in prayer and study of your word. Father, bless us as we go to these classes tonight and help us to be intrigued, Father, by your majesty in your word and to be encouraged, Father, to be in your word daily, to light our paths. We're thankful for our teachers, Father, and please bless them. And just ask you to guide us through this evening and through our lives this week to help us to continually glorify you in all we do. Thank you so much for Jesus, Father, and the great hope and the blessings we have in him. Pray in his name. Amen.
The last 24 hours of Jesus' life, a lot of things happened. A lot of things I found out that I overlooked. I'm actually talking about the last 6 hours of his life, roughly, and I've got 9 pages of notes. Don't know if we'll get through all of them or not. I thought, there's no way, but there's a lot we want to look at tonight. I'm going to back up into what Tom said last week when he talked about Jesus before Herod. One of the things Jesus endured a lot the last night of his life was mocking. Not just pain and not just abuse, but actually verbal abuse, the mocking of who he was and what he was. For instance, Herod, when he was before Herod, and it's listed a couple of different ways. Herod, when he got through, and Jesus wouldn't say anything to Herod, so he arrayed him. One version says in splendid clothing. Another says Luke says in a bright, shining garment. The New American Standard says that's a gorgeous robe, or New Revised Standard says that's an elegant robe. It was the dress of royalty. They put that on him. Why? You're a king. Kings dress royally. So he put that on him and sent him back to Pilate. That mocking won't stop. That putting him down mentally. When he gets back to Pilate, Pilate calls all the chief priests together, all the rulers together, and I missed it the first time I went through here, all the people together. And I wonder, he's been talking to the chief priests and the rulers, because they've been the one accusing Jesus. So why is he calling the people? He had already said he is not guilty. So I begin to wonder, as my supposition here, maybe if Pilate's trying to get some popular support for Jesus. No way to prove that. I wish I had a way of saying that. That's for sure what's happening. But it's interesting. It kind of goes against who Pilate is if he's doing it that way, because Pilate is known for being cruel. the word that was used, he's notorious for being cruel. He often ill-treated and executed people without any trial or any accusation. He just said, they're done. And they were killed. For instance, when Jerusalem needed their water supply worked on, he didn't have any money. But the temple had money. So Paul says, I'm going to take the money out of the temple the Jews had given the upkeep of the temple and for helping the Jewish people, and we're going to use it to upgrade the water system. So the people said, no, you're not either. And there's a riot, almost a riot, sorry. There's a big demonstration. So Pilate said, okay, I'll take care of that. Guys, he sent his Roman soldiers down there and says, make sure they don't leave. He just killed them all. Or enough of them that took care of that problem. That's the man Jesus is standing before. That's the man who's trying to release Jesus. He doesn't care about people. So why does he care about Jesus? I don't know if we can answer that, but it's an intriguing question to me. He respected no one's feelings. He had found Jesus not guilty, so did Herod. And in Luke 23, I think it's one of the verses that Tom read. Luke 23, verse 16. Very short verse. He says, here's what I'll do. I will punish him and release him. I've read that a lot of times. I'm going to punish him for what? I think Pilate is doing that. Going there and said, I'll punish Jesus, and then you'll be satisfied and you get out of my hair. But we think that's really weird, really weird. Why would you punish somebody for doing nothing he wasn't guilty of? Anything. But that's what Pilate said he was going to do. So the mocking ramps up in general. They bring Jesus into the praetorium and they strip him. Because they're going to scourge him. And usually they just strip you naked. That's part of the punishment. That's part of the shame that you bear. And after in scourging, and I'm not going to go into great detail in crucifixion and scourging because it gets really gory and I don't want to really go that far. But scourging, Cicero, the Roman writer, scholar, statesman, said it's the intermediate death. I'll give you an idea how bad it was. I've read that the Romans were good at scourging people until they were almost dead and leaving them alive so they could crucify them. Did they do that to Jesus? We're told he was scourged, and we're going to leave it at that. But it was not pleasant. So they dressed him in a purple cloak or a red robe. Two verses say that, Matthew and Mark. And they got a crown, since he was a king, but it wasn't gold, it was a crown of thorns. Now, that could be mocking. You got to have a crown, so well, here's a crown. We'll take some thorns and make a crown. Or it could have been they were actually mocking him by putting a crown that resembled the crown with the spikes out that the emperor wore. The emperor wore a crown of gold and silver with spikes coming out from it, radiant spikes. So they gave Jesus an emperor's crown. Either way, it was thorns. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. They went on. They bowed the knee before him. They saluted him saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." They struck him on the head with a reed. And then they stripped him of his kingship. by stripping off all those royal clothes. You want to get an idea of what that did to Jesus? When you have had a bad cut or a bad road rash and it's bound up, you strip all that off in a hurry. That's what he felt. His royal clothes were removed. He was redressed in his own clothes after he was scourged. All part of saying, you're not worthy to be part of us here. Then Pilate brought him back out to the people. I think he did that, like I said, Pilate was trying to release Jesus. So he brought him back out to the people, hoping that they would see what he had done. And they said, no, he needs to be, he made himself the Son of God. In John 19, verse 8, the Jew said, he made himself the Son of God. And the next verse, verse 9 says, and that made Pilate afraid. Now, either he thought he was the Son of God or a son of a God. It doesn't make any difference. Pilate is mistreating someone high up that they say comes from God or a God. And Pilate and the rest of the Roman Empire said, if the gods are mad at you, you're in real trouble. That's why they had temples. That's why they sacrificed to them, so they wouldn't be mad at them. And now he's beating one of their sons up. He's beating up one of their sons. Get it right in a second. Made him afraid, I believe, there. So Pilate calls Jesus back in and says, don't you know I have the authority to release you? In John 19, verse 11. And Jesus just responds. It's interesting in all this, basically the only person that Jesus responds to is Pilate. And Jesus says, you have no authority over me unless it's given you from above. And Pilate didn't have anything to say about that. Remember John? There's a verse in John 10 that I want us to look at right quick. Because it's going to apply to this part of Jesus' life. John 10. If I get John 10. John 10, 17 and 18. Pilate says, I have authority over you. Jesus says, no, you don't. Verse 17 of John 10. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up. And Pilate, you're wrong. I'm laying it down of my own accord. And something about this seems to me struck Pilate quite deeply, because he kept trying to release Jesus. So the Jews, look at verse 12, John 19, verse 12. Then Pilate sought to release Jesus, but the Jews cried out, if you release this man, you're not Caesar's friend. And everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar. They played their trump card. If you don't do this, you're not Caesar's friend. And Pilate owed his position to Caesar. He's already in hot water with Caesar for some other things he's done. And now he's saying, you don't do this, and Caesar hears about it, you're going to be in hotter water. Plus, anybody who says he's a king opposes Caesar. Now they've made it political. So they brought out Jesus and said, behold your king. one that was scourged. All that did was say, crucify him, crucify him. And then they go down and say in verse 15, we have no king but Caesar. In saying that, who did they dishonor? They dishonored God, because God is their king. They said, we have no king but Caesar. They didn't say anything that God didn't already know. So again, Pilate comes up with one more try. Do you guys have a custom? The custom is, I release some prisoner to you. We got Jesus right here. You want him condemned. We got this guy on the other side over here who's a murderer, an insurrectionist, a terrorist, named Barabbas. There's a great contrast there. The good guy or the bad guy? And they called out, as the chief priest urged him on, they called out for Barabbas. And Barabbas means literally son of the Father. I thought that was I didn't know that until I started studying this. Barabbas means Bar, son of, Abba, Father. So they're going to kill the real son of the Father, but they're going to release the one whose name is Son of the Father. There's a lot of irony in what John's writing. They call out for Barabbas. The plan failed. So Pilate does something that even the Jews should have picked up on. In Deuteronomy 21, verse 6, if they find someone dead out away from a town, and no one knows who the person is or what happened to him or who did it or anything like that, they go to the nearest town, and they bring all the leaders of the town together, and they wash their hands and say, we had nothing to do with this. Before God, we know nothing about this person. We don't know why he's dead. Pilate does the same thing. He washes his hands and says, it's not my problem. I didn't do this. This is on you. And then the Jew said something to me, I don't think they thought through very much at all. I may be way behind my slides. Nope, I'm not. Matthew 27:25, the crowd says that the rulers say, his blood be on us and on our kids. Who of you would say, bring it, I'll take it, my kids will pay for it too? But they said that. Be on us and on our kids. And it was. In about 40 years, Jerusalem's going to be wiped off the face of the map. And the blood was on them and on their kids, literally. One thing I found interesting too, when the Jews had said, we cannot kill anyone. We don't have authority. And that may be true. I haven't found anybody who said, here's the law, here's the statement, here's where they got this from. But it struck me, there's a sign in the temple. The temple's divided into different courts. You had the court of the Gentiles, was a big court, which is as far as the Gentiles could go in approaching God. Then you go into the court of the people and the court of the priests. But the sign on the gate leading from where the Gentiles could go into the court of the people was, any Gentile who goes past this point is responsible for his ensuing death. And they have that sign. They have that written in stone. So the Jews say, we can't kill anyone. They've got a sign that says, oh yes we can. But they're not making sense. They're trying to make Jesus the bad guy. So Pilate gives up. And so the final battle begins. Now remember, this is what Jesus has endured since the night before. He's been through 2 trials before his own people. He's been before Pilate twice and Herod once. That's 5 trials. He's had no sleep. He's alone. He's had the constant stress and the emotions of all this time. The physical abuse of scourging. Rejection by everybody. Betrayal by his nearest men. He's associated with criminals. And it's God's people who weren't God's people who were doing all this to him. And he's going to be the sacrifice for sin. And he's weakened? I think so. So he's staring at the cross, probably the cross beam of the cross. Whatever happens, the soldiers say, Simon, hey, come here, you. And he has no, Simon is just walking in, minding his own business, coming into town, probably for Passover. He's minding his own business, not hurting anybody. And then Roman say, you, Harry. And Simon has no argument. He has to do what they tell him to do. So he picks up the cross. Think how humiliating that is. You're carrying the cross that someone's going to die on. That you're associated with criminals. That you're being made to do something you don't have any part in. Now, it's about a half a mile from the Praetorium to Golgotha. If you want to know how far it is, that's from here to Walgreens. I mapped it out. I don't know if it's uphill and downhill, round curves. I don't know. I don't know how Jerusalem played out. But it's at least a half a mile carrying a cross, and Jesus is leading. And I couldn't help but think of the verse that Jesus said in Luke 9, Luke 11, 14. You must take up your own cross and follow me. And Cyrus was carrying Jesus' cross and following him. It just may be all happenstance, but it's an interesting parallel that Simon was following after Jesus. One thing, though, he's not alone now. I don't know who all follows. It says a great crowd followed him. Now, who this crowd's composed of, why they weren't around before, I don't know. Was it part of Pilate called together? I don't know for sure. But a great crowd followed him. The women were mourning and lamenting because death was very near. And they, in that culture, mourned death out loud, vocally. And Jesus stops. And he turns and he faces them. And he says, don't lament for me. Lament for yourselves. Don't miss that. He's going to die, and he stops and turns around and teaches people on the way to the cross. I never saw that before. But he stops and teaches people. And the Romans let him, which to me is kind of interesting. the Romans let him do that. He stopped and talked. And he's not through. He's not through. We're not going to talk about any of the sayings from the cross. We'll get to that. Tom and I will get to that next week. So you're not going to get any of the sayings from the cross and all this, because we're going to leave that to one lesson. But here, he stops and teaches, and he continues to do so. Golgotha. Golgotha is Hebrew for place of the skull. Calvary is Latin for place of the skull. It's the same thing. We call it Calvary. Sometimes Jews call it Golgotha. When he got there, he's crucified with two criminals. And I couldn't help but think of the irony. They said he's king. King has what? King has his court. His people who are near him. Who are his court? This murderer and this murderer. That's the way I looked at it. The king and his court. And it's the mockery of him saying, you're king, here's your court. Here's what you deserve. They made a sign. All the condemned criminals either carried a sign around their neck as they were going to be crucified, or someone walked in front of them with a sign saying what they had done wrong. And when they got there, they attached it to the cross. This sign was just very simple. It was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. In Latin, it's Jesus Nazarenus Rex Judorum, which means Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. I can't remember all it in Greek, so I won't try it. And I don't know it in Hebrew. But the Jews said, no, not King of the Jews. Say he said he was. And Pilate does something which I got to respect him for this. He says one word twice in Greek. It's one word. Said twice. In English it says, what I have written, I have written. That is one word said twice in Greek. And it means, what I wrote down, it's staying written. It's written. I wrote it, it's staying that way. And if you don't like it, tough. Two words. And he put these guys down. What I've written, I've written. I mean, I'm not changing this, and it's not going to be changed. So this is going to stay like it is. See, we see all that in the whole sentence, or whole paragraph, and Greek says it 2 words. What I've written, I've written. Why? For example, everybody comes by and say, hey, if you want to act like this man, this is going to be your fate. I've got to look, see if I can get through what I'm going to cut down here. When Jesus got to the cross, they probably stripped him naked again. That's the way the Romans did. You're shame for everybody to see. Did they do that to Jesus? One commentator says, one tradition says, the reason the sky turned black was so no one could see the sun on the cross. Now that's a tradition. It's a really kind of cool one, but just somebody's thoughts. Or he may have given in to the Jewish scruples to let him have a loincloth. I don't know. Said either way, it was embarrassing that he had to be up there. Because crucifixion was in the Roman Empire was only reserved for slaves, the lowest criminals, or a conquered army. If you're a Roman, you were beheaded, not crucified. That was humiliating for them. So they only did that to their enemies. The Jewish had a problem with this. The Jews' big problem was Messiah. You know, he's not going to be scourged. He's not going to be crucified. He's not going to be humiliated. He's not going to be treated like this. He's a conqueror. He's going to set the Jews back at the great nation. So he can't be a Messiah because, look, he's on the cross. And they ignored all their teachings. From Isaiah, well, let's go back. From Kings, from 2 Samuel, forward. No, Genesis 3, forward. I'll get it right in a second. He was offered myrrh and wine, and he refused it. Myrrh was an analgesic. It took away some of the pain. But when they really mixed a lot of it in with the wine, it was very bitter. That's why the Gospels will say it's bitter. And when it's bitter, when Jesus tasted it, he refused it because it would numb him to where he wouldn't feel it as much. He says, no way. The reason because a sacrifice for sin had to be a perfect sacrifice. Couldn't be impaired in any way or maimed in any way. And so Jesus refused that. Myrrh came from a tree found in Arabia, a tree and a bush found in Arabia and in the deserts of Africa. Very fragrant, apparently. Very good. But Jesus refused it. Well, I'm going to run out of time, so let me go on. I put the King James Version of what the Roman soldiers were doing. Because years ago, we were reading through it, and I saw they sat and watched him there. Back at one. Yeah, I missed something. Okay, I'll get this in a second. They sat and watched him there. Their job was to make sure no one took him down from the cross. Squad of 4 guys. They sat and watched him there. What were they watching? So they said they watched him. Maybe that's why we'll see some of the reactions of the centurion later on. That's what he saw in Jesus. But this is not their first crucifixion. So why are they watching Jesus? I wish I had a lot of answers to a lot of the questions I've got. While he was on the cross, they hurled abuse at him. I like the way the writers wrote that. They hurled abuse. When someone hurls something at you, what do they mean to do with whatever they're throwing? To inflict some pain, some hurt, something. They hurled abuse at him. It wasn't, you should have done that, guys. No, they were adamant and vocal about what they were saying, so they hurled abuse at him. He saved others. He can't save himself. Oh, let's just throw some things out there and see if he'll respond. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross. Matthew 27:43. 27:44 of Matthew. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him if he desires him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him if he desires him. Does that ring a bell in your reading of the New Testament anywhere? Matthew chapter 5. No, Matthew chapter 4. Verse 3. Satan, the tempter, came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread." If you really are. Verse 6. If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it's written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Note the influence of Satan at the beginning of Jesus' ministry and still now at the end. If you're a son of God, do something spectacular. Come off the cross and we'll believe. I saw a clip today of a lady was answering a question about like this. She said, so someone said, why don't we just have miracles today and God just show us who he really is? And one of the things she quoted were these. If they didn't believe, we'll do the same thing. We will not respond. Jesus knew that. That's why he didn't carry himself off the cross, because he had to die for us. So we have a chance. So Satan is not giving up. That's not in his nature. Other onlookers were Mary, his mom. Boy, how hard was that for mom to sit there and watch your son being crucified? But she did. Her mom, sis, Jesus' aunt, Mary of Clopas and Mary of Magdalene. And oddly enough, John the Apostle is there. John's the only one that seems to stick around throughout the entire time. He followed them into the high priest. He followed them and wrote about what's going on with Jesus. And now he's at the cross. Where are the other 10? Where's Peter? Where's James? We're not told. But John's there. And have a very impactful time with Jesus' mom, as we'll talk about next week. And there were a bunch of people looking on. So, Luke 23:35. The criminals were there, the chief priests were there, and they were not being silent. The passerbys called him the temple destroyer and rebuilder. The chief priests say he can't save himself. The criminals even jumped in and said, if you're the Messiah, get us off this cross with you. Interesting point. That is what they would normally do, because it says one of the things that crucified people would do would be hurl curses at their crucifiers, at the people who were sitting there watching them. Because their life is going down the tube in a big hurry. So, here's some curses I'm going to sling at you. And so they did. One thing they did at the cross, which has always been interesting for me, is they gambled for his clothes. They gambled for his clothes. Now, I found out that was normal, because when an army defeated an army, the victorious army went out there and stripped the dead, and whatever you got, that was yours. Now here's Jesus, a criminal. Well, okay, divvy up his stuff. How? Well, let's just gamble for it. They divided up 4 parts of his clothing and gambled for the one part that was just one continuous piece. They didn't want to tear it. How many of y'all will wear something that's been blood soaked? I read that and thought, why would you want it? I mean, okay, we'll wash it. We'll get most of it out, but it'll still be stained. Was it normal for them to wear something that was blood soaked? I don't know. But I thought was, why would you want it? But it was worth gambling for, so they gambled for it. And then came the unnatural events. Darkness from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, from noon to 3. What other time in biblical history was there darkness? Plague 9. Darkness for 3 days. And then also in there, if they had read Isaiah, which it's supposed to be read the Old Testament's read through every year. Isaiah chapter, on my notes here, 13. Starting in verse 10 of Isaiah, starting in verse 9. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel, with wrath and fierce anger, to make a land of desolation and destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. And I'll punish the world for evil, and wicked for their iniquity. And I'll put an end to the pomp and arrogance, and lay low the pompous pride of the ruthless. I'll make the earth and heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place at the wrath of the Lord of hosts, on the day of his fierce anger. That's Isaiah 13. That's read in the synagogues. Amos will do the same thing, but I don't think we have time to get to that. There is, and I didn't have time to look all this up, but there is a technical scientific term, and right now it makes no sense to me, but I'll just give it to you anyway. It's called seismoluminescence, meaning there's darkness at earthquakes. Now that seems to be an oxymoron. How can you have luminescence and you have darkness? But anyway, it is a documented fact. The problem with this is for 3-hour span. The sun failed to give its light. Matthew will record. It just didn't shine, or they couldn't see it. There is a tradition that says they could light a lamp, but it was so dark the lamp wouldn't show any light. I thought, well, how can you know where you lit it or not if you can't see it? But that's what I'm just reading what I found. Or was God doing some of this? Was God shutting off the scene of what his chosen people were doing to his son? Was God acting to symbolize Jesus' cry, they don't know what they're doing? Was God demonstrating what it's like to be without him? You can't see without him. Or God used it to emphasize what Jesus said in John 8:12. I am the light of the world. And they're taking out the light, so what's left? Darkness. But it also lends weight to Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. Without us, there's darkness. At the earthquake, Josephus and the Talmud report that the temple gates swung open. The Talmud reports that the temple veil, which was a handbreadth thick, it was handbreadth thick, 30 feet wide, 90 feet long, made from 72 squares sewed together. So it's a really thick veil, ripped from top to bottom. God says, come on in. Oh, also, since the gate swung open, the veil was written too. On the main, the menorah, the golden candlestick had 7 branches. The middle light is reported by Josephus to have gone out. God's saying, you've put out something I sent, but I want to welcome you into my presence. Because God could have said, you killed my son, therefore I'm done with this world and dissolve it. But he said, no. I sent him for a reason. I want you to come into my presence. Jesus' death was a reverend. In death, no one supported him, no one comforted him, no one defended, no one was allowed to. Darkness, earthquake, rocks split, temple curtain was torn. And this one, I wish we had more information about this one. Matthew 27. The tombs were opened and the saints arose. Now, can you imagine when Grandma walks into the house later on, and says, we buried you 10 years ago. Or your mom is there. Or your uncle. We're not told anything about that. They rose and appeared to people. Give me 5 minutes. The last abuse, to get them off the cross, they broke the legs of the criminals. Now, I thought they broke the legs and so they suffocated since they couldn't push up. But I'm told by one of the scholars I read, says, no, they broke the legs and that was followed swiftly by a sword into the body and dispatched them quickly. But they came to Jesus, and he was already dead, so the sword was still there. So they used the sword, and out came blood and water. Give y'all a quick toxicology lesson. When the body dies, the water comes out of the cells and it's collected in the cavity. We called it pleural fluid because you couldn't tell what it was. It's pleural fluid, blood, water, everything mixed together. And sometimes that's all we had to work with. So when the body breaks down, that's what happens. Now, Jesus gave it all. The impact it had on the centurion was, here is the Son of God or a son of a God. It can be any way, and it's debated both ways in commentaries. It doesn't make any difference. He said, this is a son of God or a son of a God that we crucified. So it's made an impression on that centurion. Now we've got to bury him quickly. So Joseph of Arimathea had to be at the cross or close by, because he goes to Pilate and says, hey, can we have the body of Jesus? He was a good, righteous man, a member of the council. He didn't consent to their actions, and he couldn't overcome them. He was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because the Jews didn't like people being disciples. He had a new tomb nearby, so he used that tomb. Nicodemus had to be pretty close by, because he says, let me help. He brings 100 pounds of spices, which is really about 72 pounds in our weight this day. They wrapped it in a clean shroud. bound the body in linen wrappings, and laid it in that new tomb that nobody had ever laid in. Closed the tomb with a great stone because tombs were open to anybody to steal from them that wanted to steal from them. So they rolled a big stone over it. We're saying all that, but look what Satan had done. Satan used Judas, snagged Peter, scattered the apostles, killed Jesus, and lost. He thought he was winning, but he lost. When they said Jesus had died, Pilate said, already? Called the centurion. The centurion says, yeah, he's dead. I stuck a sword in his side. And again, I think it goes back to John 10, 17, 18. I lay down my life for all of us. Next week we'll get to the 7 things from the cross, which are really integral in understanding part of this. But let's close with a prayer. We'll go home. Father, thank you doesn't really say a whole lot from our hearts about what we think about you giving us Jesus and him enduring all that he endured for us. We pray, Father, you'll help us as we strive to live the life you must live, that you'll forgive us when we don't, that you'll help us to influence others for you, to be impressionable on people so that, like the centurion says, there's something different about that person. Father, thank you for what Jesus endured, that he cared for us that much. Father, help us to care for one another like that too. Through Jesus we pray. Amen.